My name is Basir Mchawi. I'm the host of Like It Should Be, and we're talking with Brother Abdullah Razzaq about the Nation of Islam and his relationship to Brother Malcolm X. In our conversation, you mentioned John Ali. John Ali seems to be critically involved in much of the negative things that were taking place in Chicago regarding Brother Malcolm. Can you talk about John Ali, his relationship to Brother Malcolm, and what you see him as actually being responsible for?
Well, what Brother Malcolm told me is that he and his wife Betty shared quarters with John, at that time Simmons, and his wife Minnie, and the two women didn't get along at all. It was through Brother Malcolm that John Ali became the National Secretary of the Nation of Islam. The person who was the National Secretary before him was a jazz drummer, I believe, whose slave name was McGee, who took the name Hamas Abdul Khalis and came under the sway of some Muslim seamen, Asiatic seamen, named Tasavubu, or Tasavuba, who lived on Herzl Street in Brooklyn. John Ali was, like most capable people descended from slaves, disliked. But I understand he was an expert administrator. There was bad feelings between John Ali and Brother Malcolm, but there seemed to have been bad feelings between all the people in Chicago and Brother Malcolm, because Brother Malcolm was unique. Malcolm, I never met anyone before that was like Malcolm, and I've never met anyone since that was like Malcolm. Malcolm had a very straight and rigid line over which he would not cross, and over which he thought no one in the Nation of Islam who was receiving poor people's money should cross. Benjamin says, when Brother Malcolm sent me to Phoenix, Arizona, he put me on a plane and gave me 600 $1 bills and told me, he said, don't waste this money. This is believers' money. That's the kind of person he was. When he first got out of prison and went to Detroit, to Chicago, all of Mr. Muhammad's children were working for someone else. And Malcolm said, this shouldn't be. They should be earning their living from the nation. And he made arrangements so that everyone did. Now you got in Chicago a very, very, very unique situation. Everybody in Chicago was related to Mr. Muhammad except John Ali. Mr. Muhammad was the supreme minister of the Nation of Islam. His daughter was the supreme captain of the Muslim Girls Training and General Civilization class. She was married to Raymond Sharif, who was the supreme captain of the Fruit of Islam. Elijah Muhammad Jr. was the assistant supreme captain of the Fruit of Islam. Hassan Sharif, who was the son of Raymond Sharif and Ethel Sharif, therefore Mr. Muhammad's grandson, was the circulation manager of the Muhammad Speaks newspaper. Herbert Muhammad was the publicity relations chief of the Nation of Islam. Akbar Muhammad was the foreign correspondent. These are sons of Mr. Muhammad. So everybody in Chicago, Lottie Muhammad was the captain of the MGT at Mosque number 2, which was Chicago. Mosque number 1, which was Chicago, or one of the two. So there was this tremendous nepotism or family-run business. Now, what most people don't take into consideration is that there was another family, which was the X Little family. There was Malcolm X Little, who, as I said, was over 3 mosques and the national representative of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. There was Wilfred X Little, who was the minister of Mosque number 1 in Detroit. There was Filbert X Little, who was the minister of the mosque in Muskegon, Flint, and someplace else. There was Reginald X Muhammad, who had been a minister someplace in Michigan, but who was coming to number 7 because he had a love there. There was Wesley Muhammad, who was also a minister. There was Ella Collins, who was in Boston in Mosque number 12. So there was another big family in the nation too. Now here you had the Supreme Minister, Mr. Muhammad, who had very, very bad bronchial asthma. So bad that Malcolm did 62 radio broadcasts for Mr. Muhammad because he couldn't even talk. You had Wallace Muhammad, who I left out, who was the minister of Mosque number 11 in the mosque in Philadelphia. I get 11 and 12 mixed up. So now you have 2 juggernauts. Malcolm in New York not only is minister of Mosque number 7, he sets up 7B, 7C, and 7D. So now there are 4 mosques in New York. And Malcolm has been training ministers, which they derogatorily call Malcolm ministers, to attend these mosques. So this man is growing exponentially. Now, John Ali is in a very, very, very awkward and dangerous position. He is the only national officer that is not related to Mr. Muhammad by blood. Does that sink into everyone's mind? So this means that he is going to be more pro anything than even Mr. Muhammad's sons are as a safety measure. He does not have a blood relationship with Mr. Muhammad that ensures that he will always be there. So, and already there's an animosity between him and Brother Malcolm. Now, Brother Malcolm told me this. People ask me, do I think he was an FBI agent? I don't think so. Not an agent. Maybe an informant. I don't know. But this is what Malcolm told me. He told me John took FBI training, but he did not go to Quantico. So he couldn't have been a full-fledged FBI agent. Louis Lomax in his book, what was the name of the book?
When the Word is Given.
When the Word is Given, called John Ali an FBI agent. J. Edgar Hoover contested this. Why? Because at that time there were no non-white FBI agents. There were no FBI agents descended from slaves. There was a man named Noisette that cleaned the agents' guns for them. The chauffeur of J. Edgar Hoover's car was descended from slaves, and his house servants were descended from slaves. But there was no FBI agent descended from slaves. The first one was named Aubrey Lewis, And he walked up to me in 1964 and said, "I'm Aubrey Lewis, I'm with the Bureau." I said, "What Bureau?" He said, "The FBI." I said, "So what you want me to do?" He said, "I just want to introduce myself to you." I said, "Okay." So there were no formal FBI agents until Aubrey Lewis. Aubrey Lewis was a halfback for Notre Dame. He also ran track. And after he left the FBI, see, there's an agency much bigger than the FBI called the Former Agents of the FBI. Aubrey Lewis became the head of security for Woolworth department stores, and he died, I believe. So, as far as John Ali is concerned, personally, I didn't get along with him. I didn't like him. But because I don't like somebody doesn't mean that they're an agent. And because I like somebody doesn't mean that they're not an agent. So we were in this predicament. And we, as people descended from slaves, to me, must always keep uppermost in our mind that almost anyone we know is a potential informant. You take people that are in as economically depressed positions as we are, who do you know who, if the FBI said, "Look, I want you to keep your eye on this person, and we'll give you $500 a month," who do you know wouldn't do that? If it was, far as your life is concerned, who do you know that wouldn't blow your brains out for $50,000 if they got a written guarantee that they wouldn't have to do any time for it? Who do you know that a clever interrogator from the FBI couldn't get information from? And I could name you people that were FBI informants that would shock you. But I know that it's true. But because they're informants does not mean that they have something against you. If an FBI agent walks up to you and say, "Look, what street is this?" and you give him the address, then you're an informant. You informed him. You gave information to him. And these are people that are trained to get information from you. Here's a mother. She has a son. He's in the OAAU. And the FBI goes up and says, "Look, your son is in an organization. He means well. He's for the good of his people. We of the Federal Bureau of Investigation are too. But he's involving himself with some communists. He's going to get put on a security index. And if he gets put on a security index, he'll never be able to get a job. They won't tell him why, but they won't. What do you think the mother's going to say? She'll inform on her own son. Because she thinks it's protecting him. And I will close by saying this. When I was in school, I was very good in accounting, and I got a subscription to the Wall Street Journal, and there was a Wall Street Journal on the front cover. It told about undercover agents in Houston or Dallas. I'm almost positive it was Houston. It said there were 28 black detectives. And it said if it wasn't for rewards and informants, no crimes would ever be able to be solved in America. That's what it said. It said if the reward is high enough, a mother will inform on her son. I wish I had come, but I was dead then. I just found it interesting, and I remember it.
Well, you talked about John Ali, and you talk about these relationships as far as the family of Elijah Muhammad and everything that they're doing administratively in Chicago. How favored was Brother Malcolm by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad?
Okay, that's a question. Malcolm was the only one in Chicago that could get anything done. Now, John Ali was a good administrator, I hear. But there was nothing that ever took place in the United States of America that was adversarial to the Nation of Islam, but Mr. Muhammad sent Malcolm to take care of. this business in the prisons in Buffalo and I forget the name of the prisons upstate, was Malcolm. When Brother Ronald was shot, the secretary in Los Angeles, he didn't call on John, the minister of number 27. He sent for Malcolm from the other end of the United States, from the Atlantic part of the United States to the Pacific part. When Minister Troy got in some problem in Monroe, Louisiana, he sent Malcolm. Rochester, Malcolm. Oh, Malcolm was the one. Now, here you have an entire family, all dependent on the nation for their living now. And here you have a man, I have to tell you this, I sat down and heard Malcolm threaten to put his wife out the mosque. He said, if I hear you've been involved in anything like that again, I will put you out the mosque. I said, oh my God, this man ain't talking to his wife in front of everybody, in front of Joseph, Maceo, me, Claude. I said, ooh, this man don't play. His sister, Ella Collins, was in the mosque in Boston, Massachusetts. Lewis wanted to put her out, contacted Mr. Muhammad. Mr. Muhammad didn't think Lewis was strong enough to put out because she was a big and a strong woman and very, very verbal. They had to send Malcolm there to put his own sister out of the mosque. I'm not joking. This is serious. I'm telling you, you had to walk straight with this man. And that's why number 7 grew so fast and accomplished so much. Now, I ask you all a question which you can answer to yourself. Who else in the Nation of Islam could have taken over if Mr. Muhammad had died? And that's just what they said. They said, my God, if my father dies and this man take over, we in a world of trouble. It'll be no more putting our hands in the cash register. It'll be no more taking money, doing whatever we want to do with it. We have to walk chalk. We have to walk the straight and narrow because that's the kind of person that Brother Malcolm was. Malcolm did not feel that if this sister did something that was wrong and his wife did the same thing, he did not feel that his wife should get a different kind of punishment than his sister. He was, it's been almost 50 years since Brother Malcolm was killed. And I have never come into contact with nobody that even approached him in his sincerity, his honesty, and in his energy. The man could come in here and say, I'm going to take a nap for 20 minutes. 20 minutes later, he woke up. You think the man had 8 hours sleep? I said, how does he do this? And I told myself, don't let this man kill you, brother, because you need some sleep. And I said, brother, no, I'm serious. I don't say this to be funny. I said, brother minister, I got to get some sleep. And I be gone. And I said, I'll wake up when I wake up. Don't nobody need to wake me up in no 20 minutes because it wouldn't do me any good. But I wrote a letter to Mr. Muhammad. Told him that I thought Brother Malcolm needed a rest because I don't see how the man went. And I heard his brother Wilfred say exactly the same thing. So I'm not making up things. I was not a hero worshiper. Not a bit. As a matter of fact, I have to say this as an aside. I never respected any male descended from slavery except he was an athlete or musician until I met Brother Malcolm. Everybody else was an athlete or a musician, entertainer. And Malcolm was neither one. But whew, even when he wasn't teaching you, he was teaching you. By the way he acted, the way he did. Excuse me, I got to.
That's fine, that's fine. Come on, brother.
Pull me back.
7th son.
Okay. Mr. Muhammad had 6 sons. And first I have to tell you, Brother Malcolm had a fascination for the number 7. People say that I said Brother Malcolm was a numerologist. No, I never said that. I said he had a fascination for the number 7. And something came up. We were in the car, and Malcolm said, brother, I'm the seventh son of a seventh son, and I spent 77 months in jail, which is 7 months less than 7 years. And then I became the minister of Mosque number 7. And there's a lesson in all that. And he hit the steering wheel. And he said it so fast, he said it like it was one long word. So I didn't decode it. So I had to say it back to myself. I'm the seventh son of the seventh son. I spent 77 months in jail. It's just 7 months less than 7 years. Again, minister of Mosque number 7. Wow. So I said, well, what is all this about? Then when Sonny Liston fought Cassius Clay, he wasn't Muhammad Ali at the time, he was Cassius Clay. And he was always hanging around with Malcolm. They was buddy-buddy. And I used to box. And I said, ain't no way in the world this little boy go beat this Sonny Liston. This man's hands are that big, man. This dude was a giant. Cassius Clay whooped Sonny Liston. I said, well, I'll be dipped in mud. So I told Brother Malcolm, I said, you know, I didn't think he'd whoop. Malcolm said, I knew he was going to win. I said, you knew he was going to win? What made you know he was going to win? He said, because the fight was on February 25th, and 2 and 5 is 7. And I sat in the 7th seat in the 7th row. So I knew he was going to win. I said, well, I'll be dipped in mud. This guy really goes for this number 7. So several people argued with me. They said, he wasn't the 7th son, he was the 6th son, so and so. And Peter Bailey and Rodnell Collins wrote a book. What did they call it? The 7th Child. So a writer said to me, Malcolm wasn't no 7th son. He was the 7th child. I said, I'm not a genealogist. I don't know what it was. I'm telling you what he told me. And I have a very, very good memory for what people tell me. I said, that's what he told me. I went through the book, The 7th Child, and any of you can go through it. And in it, Rodnell and Peter Bailey say that Malcolm called himself Mr. Muhammad's 7th son. I said, oh. It was right there in the book in front of y'all, and you still didn't see it. And then, going through the FBI papers, FBI, they call this Telsure. Telsure means telephone surveillance, where they can make your telephone pick up everything that's going around you. And Telsure and Mr. Muhammad told Malcolm, yes, you're my 7th son. So, and Malcolm told me this thing about the 7th son the week in which he was killed. So at that time, he referred to himself as the 7th son, whereas in the autobiography, he referred to himself as the 7th child. It really was interesting. So people ask me, would Malcolm have gone back to the nation? I think if Mr. Muhammad had called him a half hour before he was shot and said, look, the devil and got us at one another's throats. Come back and let's talk this thing over. He'd have went back. I think that's an opinion.
Now, in Brother Malcolm calling himself the 7th son of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, what did that mean?
That meant that he was the spiritual son of Mr. Muhammad. That he was his 7th son. Mr. Muhammad had 6 sons, physical sons, and he was a spirit. This is done in the Christian church all the time. A young minister comes out, and whoever sponsors him, he will call him his spiritual father.
In terms of the status, did the Honorable Elijah Muhammad favor Malcolm over his 6 sons?
Yay, bo. There's a pig's butt pork. How could he not favor him when he was the only one who could get something done? The only other member of Mr. Muhammad's family who showed any spirituality was Wallace, and he put Wallace out the nation 4 times. Does that answer your question? None of the other sons showed any inclination towards spirituality. So Wallace was the minister of the mosque in Philadelphia, and he got put out several times. And he he got put out several times.
Let's go to early 1964. As you said earlier,
Yeah.
Brother Malcolm had been suspended.
Yeah,
You had some conversations with him.
yeah.
Talk about those conversations.
Well, first I have to say that I was a follower of Mr. Muhammad. I was not a follower of Malcolm. I had tremendous admiration for Malcolm, but I had admiration for Malcolm because Malcolm was the greatest exponent of Mr. Muhammad's philosophy. So, as I said, Wallace had been put out the mosque at least 3 times at that time. Minister Lucius B.R. in Washington got busted, or we would say, what is not expelled, but suspended. Time out. Got time out. Sat down, right. He got sat down, so there was no minister over mosque number 4. So Malcolm was put over that mosque. The minister over mosque number, which is Philly, 11 or 12? 12, okay, was named George X. Patton. He got put out because of some deal with a boss, so that entire mosque got sat down. There were no officials in the mosque. I had to go from New York to Philadelphia to post the front rostrum post, pick up the money, take the attendance sheet and everything, and get on the train and come back to New York with it. There were no officials in that mosque. Malcolm was the minister of that mosque. The minister in Camden, New Jersey got sat down. See, to a person who wasn't in the nation, all of this seems weird, bizarre, but it was commonplace to us. You know, Joseph got put out, according to Manning Marable, Joseph got put out the mosque for 90 days because he smacked his wife. He smacked Sylvia. 90 days. That's how the nation was. You got caught coming out of the cab with a cigarette. 30 days out the mosque. Don't drink a glass of beer. You're liable to get 60 days for that. The nation was a very, very, very rigidly controlled organization. If sisters got to talking about one another, yeah, she walking around with her big old fat self, 30 days, slack talk. You couldn't, it's very hard to explain because we're so loose now. We're so loose, but in the nation, I loved Hershey bars, but I liked Hershey bars with almonds. And Mr. Muhammad said, he said, don't eat no peanuts. Every peanut take a year off your life. Well, I said, sure, I'm gonna kill myself then because I'm getting almonds on my Hershey bar. But I checked, I'd look, may I have an almond bar, may I have a Hershey bar, please? With almonds. Gotta give me the almond. Go on. I do. Malcolm, to the day he was killed, he loved banana splits. There's a place called 22 West 135th Street. And whenever he went in there, he'd get a banana split. He said, I like a banana split. No nuts. I thought that was comical. Even when he was out of the nation, no nuts. Of course, Mr. Muhammad said a peanut, okay, a lot of stuff like that. But it was a different organ. It was like being in the Marine Corps, but not in uniform. I mean, when you walked, I don't know, brother, did you have to cut corners?
Yes, sir.
We had to cut corners. You couldn't walk like this. You walk. People looked at us, thought we was crazy, but that's how it was.
Your conversations with Malcolm in early '64.
Okay. Early '64, not much. I went with him. I acted security because he wasn't officially out of the mosque yet. Not until March 8th, he wrote a letter or a telegram to Mr. Muhammad and then the March 12th press conference. Up until then, we went places. There was a Dr. Thomas Matthews, I think his name was. He gave a little social gathering. We went to things like that. But I was still in the nation, and if I got caught, I would have got busted. So do you mean after the March 12th press conference? Or between December 1st and March 12th?
Well, you have said
Yeah.
that you began hearing things
Yeah.
when you were in the nation.
Oh, yeah.
So, and you at some point shared this with Brother Malcolm.
Okay, yes. What happened, as I told you, I sent a letter to Mr. Muhammad saying that I thought Malcolm was tired and needed a rest. And before that, I went to Baltimore, Maryland, to hear Minister Isaiah. He was what we call a cornball minister. He taught and made you laugh, but a good minister. And he said, look, I'm tired of dealing with you apple skull Negroes. He said, I want everybody in here to get up and come up here and give me $1. I said to myself, that ain't right. But I got up and I gave the $1. But when I came back to number 7, I wrote a letter. I said, you know, I think Minister Isaiah is wrong and da-da-da-da-da-da-da, and I gave the letter to Captain Joseph because he was my superior. So something came up and he laughed at me. He said, ha, 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 67 wrote a letter on the minister. And I said, what's so funny? I write a letter on you. I mean, we supposed to be building a nation. You don't build a nation. There was a thing in the nation that said, always be on the lookout for that, cast out the rotten apple quick, and always be on the lookout for that fast, crooked deceiver, or he will pull a fast one over. And so we watch for stuff like this, little slick tricks. So that made, I think that made Malcolm say, it made Joseph say, we got another Malcolm on our hands here. He said, I better watch him. So he started bugging me. Okay. Malcolm got busted. I worked for the Department of Welfare on 124th, 125th Street. The building ran all the way through. And I typed the menus for the restaurant, so I got my meals free. So at lunchtime, since we only ate one meal a day, we only ate one meal after 6 o'clock. We'd eaten breakfast or lunch in the nation. And every month we went on a 3-day or 72-hour fast. So I come in to type the menus, and I hear the brothers in the restaurant talking. Yeah. Don't call him Malcolm. Call him Red. Yeah, call him Big Red. He never was with the messenger. So I said, are these brothers lost their minds, or are they trying to feel me out? Since I had written this letter to Mr. Muhammad, I reached the conclusion, well, they're trying to feel me out, and Joseph is putting them up to it, because Joseph was like the overseer of the restaurant. So I paid no attention to him. Then I hear, yeah, they ought to kill him. Yeah, they ought to kill Red. Get rid of him. Kill him. So I said, wait a minute. Is this the organization where if you say, go wash your feet, brother, you get 30 days in the mosque? Is this the same organization where Mr. Muhammad said, you kill one of these brothers, you must die, and these are brothers in the restaurant talking about killing Malcolm? I said, no, this is Joseph and his trickery. He's trying to find out which way I'm leaning. So I just wouldn't pay no attention. Then John Ali came from Chicago. And on the rostrum, he said, we're getting letters from the East Coast. Letters from the East Coast threatening the life of our holy apostle. And I said to myself, there ain't no postmark East Coast. If a letter came, it got to have a stamp on it telling its origin. It got to be from New York or Massachusetts or Holyoke or Rhode Island or something. And I said, he's whispering evil suggestions in firm resolution, which is a line in the Quran. I said, something funny is going on here. And it ain't Joseph because he's coming from Chicago. So this is coming from Chicago. So I called Malcolm my big brother. So I said, I better call Big Brother and tell him something's rotten in the state of Denmark. So I called him up, and Betty, his wife, answered the phone. And I said, this is 67. I said, listen, tell my big brother to be careful. She said, well, I said, sister, just give him a message, please, okay? And I hung up the phone. Because if you spoke to someone who was in Class C, you went into Class C. I called the second time, because this thing is escalating. I think I called the third time, and he took the phone from her. He said, brother, you got something to say, say it. I said, well, brother, they talking about killing you. Well, he laughed. He said, what, killed me? I wasn't a Sunday Muslim. I put the 12 years of my life into that organization. I said, brother, I'm not stupid. I'm telling you what they're doing. Arthur 24, Charles 24, So he said, brother, would you meet me somewhere? I'd like to talk to you. So I said to myself, this is Chicago business. This is none of my business. So those of you who've been in the service, you have the enlisted men's club and you have the officers club, right? You don't mix. The officers take care of officers' business. The enlisted men take care of enlisted men, brothers. And never the twain shall meet. So in any event, I said, okay. So the first thing I said to him, he asked me to meet him on 116th Street and I think 2nd Avenue. And I did. He picked me up in the car. He drove over to Morningside Avenue, right in front of Morningside Park. And we talked. And I said, brother, you were seen in favor by Mr. Muhammad. And I hope you return to his favor. That's the first thing I want to say, because I said, I don't want to be getting involved in no hugger-mugger. And he started telling me what was going on in Chicago and about the babies and da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And he said, when I go back in the nation, I said, you ain't going back in the nation. He said, what makes you say that? I said, I told you, they talking about killing you. So he said, I don't know. So I said, well, I know, I'm telling you. I listen to Joseph, I'm listening to all this business going on by John Ali. You ain't going back in the nation. You could be spoken of in the past tense. So he struck out, telling me these things about the babies and this, that, and the other. And that didn't impress me, I'll be frank with you, because I can't say what I thought at the time because there are ladies here. But I couldn't see. I had been to college, I had been around, and one of the measures by which
At that point that we ought to stop.
That I hung
and when
out
we come
with,
back after this break, stay with us.
measured ourselves was by our conquest of women. It wasn't no shame to have 4 or 5 girlfriends. That made you. So I couldn't see what this was all about. But eventually he told me it was Ronald Stokes. It wasn't the sisters, the girls, the babies. Did I run astray?
You good. We've got to kind of almost get ready to finish up. So in this last year, Brother Malcolm leaves the nation in March of 1964.
March the 12th, yeah.
And then we know February 21st, 1965, he is assassinated.
Yeah.
What was your relationship with Brother Malcolm in that last year?
Well, I just did everything. First, I have to explain, most of the time Malcolm wasn't even here. He spent more time out of the country in 1965 than he did in the country, in 1964 than he did in the country. He made the press conference. I arranged all the press conferences that he had in the United States, in New York. March the 12th, he announced his official severance of his relationship with the Nation of Islam as an organization. March the 14th, he was in Maryland. April the 13th, he got on the plane to make Hajj. In order to make Hajj, he had to go to Boston to borrow money from his sister. We were traveling all over, bouncing. We had to form the Muslim Mosque Incorporated. We had to get the corporate seal. We had to get the papers. We had to go to the lawyer. We had to rent a place, which we would call our corporate home. So we went to the Hotel Teresa and rented Suite 128. Then they wanted to sell us the hotel, so sell him the Hotel Teresa. So we had to go downtown to see about that. We was jumping around, bouncing around until he got on the plane April the 13th to make Hajj. Well, he stayed overseas for over a month. He didn't come back till May 22nd or 3rd. Came back May 22nd, comes to the Hotel Teresa from the airport, tells me, pack your bag, brother. I said, for what? Said, we going to Chicago. I said, when? He said, tonight. I said, tonight? To myself. Because he just got off Idlewild or Kennedy, comes to the Hotel Teresa, makes a speech at the Hotel Teresa, comes back home. I guess he took a shower. And then we got on the plane to Chicago. Then we stayed in Chicago for a period of time. Then he was in Los Angeles by himself. He went to Canada. He went to the England for the Oxford debate. He was out of the country more than he was in the country, and when he was in the country, he wasn't in New York all of the time. So a whole lot of the stuff that we did was on the airplane, or if he was driving, he would give me the instructions by car. When he was overseas, he told me to go work for Muhammad Yusuf Shawabi at One Riverside Drive at the Islamic Center so that I could get phone calls from him there. It was woo. It's even hard to reconstruct it. He was doing so many things, speaking at churches, going to Rochester. His house got firebombed Valentine's Day. The next day he was in Detroit, Michigan, speaking with his clothes all smoky. It's when you try to reconstruct it, you say this couldn't have happened. Sometimes he spoke 2 places in one day in 2 different states. I don't know. It's very, very, very difficult to explain, but I did what I was told.
Why did you cast your lot with Brother Malcolm?
Because he's the most intelligent human being I ever met in my life. I mean intelligent. I don't mean educated. I have met more educated jackasses than I want to throw a stick at, who don't know nothing of any benefit to our people. And all they can do is find someone who does mean some benefit to our people and tear them down. So many of them. Look at Jimmy Hicks said, why do these Negroes debate with this man? They know he's going to beat them to death. But they keep coming back. Bayard Rustin, James Baldwin, all these people that was going to argue. And when you got to the intelligentsia, the intellectual, one man, any Garveyites in here? You know what Marcus Garvey said about the Negro intellectual? He said the present-day Negro or colored intellectual is no less a liar and a cunning thief than his illustrious teacher. His Occidental collegiate training only fit him to be a rogue and a vagabond and a seeker after the easiest and best by following the lines of least resistance. He is dull and uncreative and uses his wiles to take advantage of the less fortunate members of his race and thereafter to agitate and propagate for social acceptance with industrious whites. To every rule there may be an exception, and it may be applied in this case. And I said that to Manning Marable, and that's why he wouldn't send me a copy of the book. That's the truth. Ms. Dobb said, I want to read to you this thing because something we said. But, and this man here said, oh, you didn't get a copy of the book? I'll get you a copy of the book. I said, I don't want a copy. And he said, why? I said, after all the time and energy he took from me, from my family that I gave to him, and he wouldn't send me, I don't want it. I don't want it. But a man who sits next to me at my daughter's fencing school came in with this book, and he gave it to me, and this is amazing. He says, Abdullah, it's been a pleasure and honor knowing you all these years to also discover that you got to know Malcolm. Humbles me even more every year. For every year in the past 25 years, I visited my grandmother's grave on 525, and I've also placed flowers on Malcolm's and Betty's grave at Ferncliff, Arncliffe? Please, Ferncliff, yeah. Please enjoy this book. I got it the first day it came out for you. And Mrs. Dobson was telling me that you go there every year too, didn't you? Weren't you? Yeah. Isn't that amazing? Otherwise, I wouldn't have read the book because I wasn't going to buy it.
Finally, you said that Brother Malcolm made you. What do you mean by that?
I mean, my concept of a man that I obtained at university was what kind of whiskey you drank. See? If you drank 3 Feathers, 4 Roses, you weren't into too much. You had to drink Canadian Club, Johnny Walker Red, Dewar's, and when you got up to Ballantine's Scotch, 25-year-old Ballantine's, you was a better person than the guy who drank, what was it, Thunderbird. Ain't that stupid? Then you had to run women. You had to have, anywhere you go, you had to have some sister that you was conning. Then some brothers judge you by your clothes or by your shoes. There was a Barnum and Bailey world. And nothing you did was of any benefit to us as a people. When you stop and think about the slaves that were brought over here to plant tobacco, and you were judged by the cigarette you smoke or the pipe, man. I had a Wally Frank Briar pipe with rum and maple tobacco, brother, and would put me on a Harris tweed suit, and I thought I was into something, and I was going nowhere. And then I met Malcolm, and here's a man, every minute, everything he did was for the upliftment of our people. It made me ashamed of the way I had been. But nobody else could make me feel ashamed because everybody else was doing the same thing. And I said, well, if this little old man, Muhammad, can turn out men like this, I'll join. And I did. And anything he asked me to do, I tried to do. And he never asked me to do anything that I thought would compromise me as a man. If he saw a brother in a restaurant talking to a sister in our restaurant, he said, Captain Joseph, is that brother working? Captain Joseph said, no, Brother Minister. He said, then get him away from that sister. He said, no brother in here got a right to be talking to any of these sisters unless he got a job, unless he's working. And Manny Marable calls him a misogynist. I don't understand that. Malcolm thought very highly of women. And away you got whipped. There's some brothers, they come in, they see the sisters all clean, and they whites and everything, and the sister, and this is a very vulnerable age, this teenage for sisters. And he figured he could go through the sisters. Oh, we took him upstairs, and we beat him so bad, he didn't want to look at a woman for a long time. Yes, we did. And I'm not ashamed of it. I got daughters. We need more of that. I thought. I still think that, see, but let me shut up. Yeah, that was one way. I told you, Joseph was the captain of the FOI, and he smacked his wife, and he got 90 days out of the mosque. Because you know why? Because his wife was a sister. You could do that to a lost found, maybe, beat a woman that wasn't in the nation. But if your wife was in the nation and you put your hands on her, you had to answer to the FOI, even if you was the captain.
Well, Brother Abdullah, we have to end right here for now.
All right.
We actually used up all our time, but I'd like to say Asante Sana, Brother Abdullah, Razzaq, and we have to see how we can continue our conversations.